Dragon Emperor's Son Chapter 341 to Chapter 350. No matter how tired he is outside, as soon as he gets home, David feels very comfortable, especially when he eats the food made by his mother. Although he knew that Chen Baoqiu and Barbara were not his biological parents, David didn't feel anything, nor did he feel estranged from his parents. Mom! David changed his shoes and saw that no one answered, so he shouted, but no one answered. Where did you go? Did you go out again? David, nagging, walked to the restaurant, but saw a piece of paper on the table. When David picked it up, it turned out to be a letter from Barbara to David. David, I went back to my hometown with your dad to live for a while. You have been busy outside every day recently, but you should also pay attention to your health. There is something I prepared in the refrigerator. If you want to eat it, you can heat it yourself. In addition, Sonia is a good girl. But you can't let others down, otherwise my dad and I won't be able to spare you. We are not at home during this time, you can take Sonia to the house and take care of your life, so that mom can rest assured, and mom wants to hold her grandson, you can do it yourself. Looking at Barbara's letter to him, David laughed. He knew that his parents' purpose of returning to the old house was to let him take Sonia over to live with him. It's embarrassing to be anonymous. David put away the letter, thinking about whether his parents should go to live in his hometown, but now he has offended many people, and if his parents live in Horrendal, what danger will there be? David took out some food from the refrigerator and ate it as he warmed it up. After eating, David took out the jade pendant from the Wei family. The jade pendant is dark green and the surface is very smooth. At a glance, you can see that the texture is very good. After playing carefully for a while, David suddenly bit his finger and dripped a drop of blood on the jade pendant, which was soon absorbed by the jade pendant. Seeing this scene, the corner of David's mouth raised a smile, his eyes closed slightly, his hands were holding the jade pendant tightly, and a faint golden light emerged from David's hand. David let go of his hand suddenly, and the jade pendant wrapped in golden light was suspended in mid-air, and above the jade pendant, a black streak kept running around. Behind this black, there is a blood-red color chasing after, the whole jade pendant is like a competition field, this black and red two colors are constantly chasing. Break! Suddenly, David opened his eyes, and a ray of light erupted in his eyes, directly shining on the jade pendant. Pat! The jade pendant suddenly disappeared from the golden light, fell from mid-air to the ground, and fell directly into two halves. And after the jade pendant fell into two halves, a black-red blood flowed out from it. David picked up the two halves of the jade pendant, wiped the blood on it, and muttered to himself, "What a good thing." Holding the two halves of the jade pendant, David directly injected spiritual power into the two halves of the jade pendant, and then found a red rope to tie the knot. With this jade pendant, if Sonia is in danger, I will be able to know it immediately, and I will be able to resist a single injury for her. David smiled lightly and called Sonia. These things let David know that no matter how strong he is still incapable of being cloned. With this jade pendant, there is his blood essence and spiritual power in it. Now the jade pendant is divided into two parts. Even if he and Sonia are not together, as long as the two wear the jade pendant, they can sense each other. As long as Sonia is in danger, David will know it immediately. "Why, you missed me just after being separated for a long time." Sonia answered David's phone and said with something in her mouth. "Stop being narcissistic, who misses you? I have something for you, come to Pinarist Villa." David said stubbornly. In fact, they miss each other in their hearts, even if they are separated for a minute. "Humph, just be stubborn and give me something? Won't you come to my house and give it to me?" Sonia smiled lightly. "This thing has to come over in person, come quickly." After David finished speaking, he hung up the phone without waiting for Sonia to speak. In fact, David called Sonia over for his own purpose. He wanted Sonia to know that his parents were not at home, and then left Sonia to live with him. Humph, this guy dares to hang up on me. Sonia pouted, got up, changed her clothes, and drove towards the Pine Mountain villa. After arriving at the place, Sonia packed up and walked in with a smile on her face, because she knew that David was with her parents, and when she met David's parents, Sonia had to smile and speak respectfully. But when Sonia walked into the villa, she found that there was no one in the living room, only David walked out of the kitchen. Sonia looked up and down again, and seemed to be looking for the traces of David's parents. If David's parents are at home, Sonia can't be too casual. Don't look, my parents are back home, not here. David looked at Sonia like that and smiled slightly. Hey, Sonia breathed a sigh of relief upon hearing this. It's not that David's parents are not easy to get along with, it's just that in front of the elders, Sonia always has to pay attention to not leave a bad impression on others. You're brave enough to hang up on me. Sonia saw that David's parents were not at home, so she let go of herself, and stepped forward and said to David's ear. Hey! David snorted and hurriedly apologized, I was wrong, I will never hang up your phone again. Seeing David admit his mistake, Sonia released her hand, what do you want to give me? David took out the jade pendant, you put this on your body, and if you have something to do, I will know as soon as possible. Sonia took the jade pendant, looked left and right, and said in surprise, why is it half? What about the other half? Fool, of course the other half is here with me. David took out his other half, and followed Sonia's pair, and it became a complete jade pendant. When the two jade pendants were put together, it could be seen that a touch of golden light continued to flicker outwards. You have a conscience. Sonia smiled, brought the jade pendant to her body, and continued, Uncle and Aunt are not at home, who will cook for you? You, didn't I call you here? David smiled badly. Sonia rolled her eyes at David, I don't care about you, we are married or not, and I'm not your girlfriend, why should I cook for you? You took my jade pendant. This is our token of love. You are my girlfriend now. Besides, I asked you to take care of me. It's not what I said, it's what my mother said. After David finished speaking, he showed Sonia the letter from Barbara. When Sonia saw the end, Barbara said that she wanted to hug her grandson, her face turned red, and she returned the letter to David, since it was said by my aunt, then I will take care of you here for a few days, but we can agree, one person, one room, you can't do bad things at night. Don't worry, do you think I'm someone who does bad things? David felt happy when Sonia agreed to stay. At this time, David and Sonia were together, just a young man in love. How could he tell that he was someone who would kill without blinking and kill decisively? In the evening, David sat on the sofa and slowly absorbed the spiritual energy of heaven and earth. Although the spiritual energy is very thin, it is better than nothing. It is impossible to always have rare medicinal materials for him to cultivate. As for Sonia, she was holding her mobile phone and cooking while searching. As the richest woman, where did Sonia cook for herself? But for David, Sonia was still learning and doing it, and her forehead was full of sweat. Looking at Sonia's busy figure in the kitchen, David's eyes are full of love. Just then, David's cell phone rang suddenly. David answered the phone, it was Gu Wenchen who called. Mr. Chen, do you have time now? Pavilion Master Li of the provincial city Hufa Pavilion wants to see you. Gu Wenchen asked carefully. Master of the Protector Pavilion? What do you see me doing? David frowned slightly. I don't know either. He held a banquet at the Regal Hotel. I hope you can attend. Gu Wenchen didn't know what David was doing in the provincial capital, he just passed the word on his behalf, he didn't know what to do. Okay, I'll be there right away. David nodded and hung up the phone. After hanging up the phone, David got up and walked into the kitchen, telling Sonia not to cook. As soon as he walked into the kitchen, he saw a black smoke rising up. David hurriedly stepped forward and took the pot off the stove. "Ah, what's the matter?" Sonia was a little overwhelmed when she saw black smoke coming from the pot. When David opened it, he found that the rice in the pot was already mushy, and it was pitch black. When Sonia saw it, she looked at David like a little girl who did something wrong and said, I forgot to add water." David smiled, "Okay, we won't cook, let's go out to eat, someone will treat you." "Who treats you?" Sonia asked. The phone call from Gu said that Li Ji, the chief of the provincial capital's law enforcement pavilion, met me and held a banquet at the Regal Hotel. David said truthfully. "The patriarch of the protectorate pavilion sees you." Sonia frowned, and suddenly her eyes widened. "Could it be because you killed the Wei family in the provincial capital?" After Sonia said this, David suddenly realized, then nodded and said, "It's possible." After all, David didn't know the pavilion owner of the Dharma protector, so it must be something that the other party wanted to see him by name. Then let's not go." Sonia's face flashed worry. "Don't worry, it's all right." David comforted Sonia. At that time, David destroyed and lost the surveillance video recorder, in order to solve unnecessary troubles in the future. After changing their clothes, David and Sonia came to the Regal Hotel together, but what surprised David was that there were other people attending the banquet, not just David. It seemed that the other party was not for the way family things come to him. Reuben, Ling Zhenchuan, and other Horrendal bigwigs are all there. After all, Pavilion Master Li is from the provincial capital and Horrendal, and these people want to have a relationship. After all, these people are familiar with David, and they greeted David one after another, and David returned one by one. At this time, in the corner, Gulinger in uniform was paying attention to everyone's every move, but when Gulinger saw Sonia, her whole face was slightly startled. She walked over quickly, a little surprised. "Sonia, why are you here?" "Linger, why are you here?" Sonia looked at Gulinger in surprise, and then looked at Gulinger's uniform. "Not bad, you turned out to be a detective, you look so handsome in this dress." "I'm here with our pavilion master Li." Gulinger finished speaking, looked at David and asked Sonia, "Who is he from you?" Sonia glanced at David and saw the jade pendant on her body, and then said, "His name is David Chen, he is my boyfriend." Now that David has sent a token of love, even if the two have officially established their relationship, Sonia can also introduce it to others. "David." Gulinger was stunned for a moment, then she said in surprise, "Is he your boyfriend?" "Ah, what's wrong?" Sonia asked suspiciously when she saw Gulinger's expression. "Linger, this is Mr. Chen. You called me and asked about Mr. Chen. See you now." At this moment, Gu Wenchen walked over and said with a smile on his face, "Grandpa, why didn't you follow me at the time? Is this David Sonia's boyfriend?" Gulinger frowned slightly and seemed to complain a little. "You didn't ask, besides, Grandpa doesn't know if Miss Su and Mr. Chen have established a relationship, so you can't talk nonsense." Gu Wenchen looked helpless, and then asked strangely, "How did you meet Miss Su?" "Grandpa, Sonia and I are college classmates, of course we know each other." Gulinger replied. At this time, Sonia looked at Gulinger in shock. "Linger, Gu is your grandfather? Why didn't you mention it when you were in school?" Gu Wenchen used to be an official in the provincial capital. Anyone with such a grandfather would have to show off in school, but Sonia had never heard Gulinger mention it. "I don't want others to know my background, and I just want to rely on my own efforts to make some achievements, and I don't want to rely on family connections and help," Gulinger explained. "Linger is just too strong, she doesn't want to depend on her family for anything." Gu Wenchen's tone was a little distressed. David glanced at Gulinger more, and still admired Gulinger a little bit. Now many young people are living by gnawing their old age, and there are too few girls like Gulinger. "Grandpa, you see that I don't rely on my family now, don't I have a good life? You don't have to worry about it." Gulinger said with a slight smile. Yes, it's pretty good now, follow Li Ji's lead and strive to take his place in the future. Gu Wenchen smiled and said, okay, let's chat with you young people, I'll go say hello to others. Gu Wenchen left, David and the others found a place to sit down. Gulinger always looked at David, as if he had something to say, but he never said anything. Sonia, come here. At this time, Reuben waved to Sonia not far away, as if to ask Sonia to meet a few people in the past. Sonia got up and said apologetically to Gulinger, Linger, wait for me first, I'll be back soon. Well, you go. Gulinger nodded. Sonia walked back, only David and Gulinger were left. At this time, David slowly opened his mouth and said, Miss Gu, just ask what you want to ask. Gulinger was stunned for a moment, but she still asked, did you do the Wei family's affairs? Yes. David answered happily without any concealment. David's happy admission was beyond Gulinger's expectations, and Gulinger suddenly didn't know what to say. Seeing that Gulinger didn't speak, David continued, you guys are holding such a banquet mainly for me, right? Not bad. Seeing David being so cheerful, Gulinger nodded, we're going to take you back to the provincial capital. David glanced at all the people at the scene. There were no more than 10 people in the law enforcement pavilion, and they were all ordinary detectives, and there were no masters. Just because of you, if I don't agree, can you take me back? David smiled lightly, but there was no hostility in his tone. Gulinger was silent for a while. She knew very well in her heart that it would be difficult to bring David back to those who were able to exterminate dozens of people in the Wei family. Whether I can or not, I have to try it. This is my duty. Gulinger said firmly. David smiled slightly, picked up a cup of tea and drank it slowly, without talking. What are you two talking about? At this moment, Sonia came back. Oh, nothing to talk about. Gulinger said quickly. It can be seen that Gulinger doesn't want Sonia to know about this. David, Gu asked you to come over, and I happened to follow Linger to talk about the past. Sonia patted David on the shoulder and said. Oh. David nodded, stood up, and looked at where Gu Wenchen was. At this time, Gu Wenchen was sitting with a middle-aged man at a table with no one else on the table. After David walked over, Gu Wenchen hurriedly introduced to David, Mr. Chen, this is Li Shaoyi, the pavilion master of the provincial capital's law enforcement pavilion. Master Li. David shouted politely. Li Shaoyi nodded and waved his hand to signal David to sit down. Mr. Chen, Pavilion Master Li just asked me about your situation for a long time, and I appreciate you very much. As soon as he sat down, Gu Wenchen said with a smile. David raised the corner of his mouth slightly and sneered, if you want to arrest me, you can come directly. It's a waste to engage in such a grand scene. As soon as David's words came out, Gu Wenchen was stunned, and Li Shaoyi was also stunned. He didn't expect David to know. Mr. Chen, what does this mean? Gu Wenchen asked with a puzzled face. I destroyed the Wei family, they are here to make a fortune for the Wei family. David said lightly. It seems that destroying the Wei family is nothing more than a trivial matter in David's opinion. You really killed the Wei family. When Li Shaoyi saw that David had admitted it directly, his face froze. That's right, I killed him. If you let me know that someone in the Wei family is still alive, I'll kill him. David replied calmly. Since you admit it, this matter is easy to handle. After this meal, just follow me obediently. Li Shaoyi suddenly burst out with an aura, covering David by the way. As the pavilion master of the Dharma Protector Pavilion, his strength is of course not too bad. David sneered, his eyes full of disdain, just because of you. Suddenly, David's body trembled slightly, and a majestic and turbulent momentum instantly overwhelmed Li Shaoyi's momentum. The raging killing intent was rising in David's body. Trembling, full of surprise. Mr. Chen, calm down. Gu Wenchen finally understood now, and hurriedly persuaded David, then looked at Li Xiaoyi and said, Li Xiaoyi, if you are here to arrest Mr. Chen, then you should leave quickly, you don't have to. If you can't take Mr. Chen, and the Wei family has done absolutely bad things, they should have died a long time ago. Ancient, Li Xiaoyi looked at Gu Wenchen with a puzzled face. Although he is the pavilion owner of the Protectorate Pavilion, Li Xiaoyi does not dare to be disrespectful to Gu Wenchen, because he was the pavilion owner who was picked up by Gu Wenchen back then. Otherwise, how could Gu Linger, a detective, always follow Li Xiaoyi's side of woolen cloth? Gu Wenchen started talking to Li Xiaoyi about Wei Tao's kidnapping of Sonia, as well as Wei Kunan bringing someone to Horindal to kill David. As for what happened in Yunchench, Gu Wenchen didn't know, so I didn't follow Li Xiaoyi. After listening to Li Xiaoyi, he was silent, and the atmosphere became a little awkward for a while. On the other side, Sonia and Gu Linger were chatting happily. Sonia, how long have you known David? Gu Linger suddenly asked Sonia. 2 months, it's not a long time. Sonia thought for a while and said. 2 months? You are boyfriend and girlfriend? Do you know David? Do you know who he is? Gu Linger got excited when she heard that Sonia had only known David for 2 months. Seeing Gu Linger's sudden excitement, Sonia said with a strange face, What's wrong? David is very good, I know him, I have met his parents. What do you know? He's a murderer, do you know? He wiped out the Wei family, and the method was too cruel. Gu Linger couldn't help but told the truth, but when she said it, she regretted it a little. After all, it was not good for Sonia to know this kind of thing. Originally, she thought that Sonia would be surprised when she found out, but who knew that Sonia didn't have a surprised expression, but nodded and said, I know, he did that for me. For you. Gu Linger was puzzled. Sonia told Gu Linger what she had experienced, including what happened in Yunchench this time. This Wei Tao is simply inferior to a beast, damn it. After Gu Linger heard this, she slammed her fist on the table angrily. Linger, you came to Horindal this time, wouldn't it be to catch David? Sonia suddenly reacted and asked Gu Linger. Me? Gu Linger spoke for a while, not knowing how to answer Sonia. Linger, if you arrested David, don't blame me for not recognizing you as a classmate, not to mention that the ancient life was saved by David, you can't take revenge for your kindness. Sonia's face became a little gloomy. What? Then David saved my grandfather. Gu Linger suddenly exclaimed, she never knew about it. Of course, if you don't believe me, go ask the ancients, but I don't know the specifics. Sonia only heard David mention it occasionally, but Sonia didn't know what was going on. Gu Linger felt a wave in her heart, if David really saved her grandfather, how could she do anything to David? Gu Linger got up and walked towards Gu Wenchen, Sonia hurriedly followed behind. The arrival of Gu Linger and Sonia broke the awkward atmosphere between David and the others. Linger, what are you doing here? Gu Wenchen asked when he saw Gu Linger and Sonia coming. Grandpa, did David save your life? Gu Linger asked directly. Of course, Mr. Chen not only saved me, he also saved Mayor Ling, and even hundreds of thousands of people in Horindal. Gu Wenchen knew that David helped Ling Zhenchuan get rid of the control of those Hong Kong businessmen, that's why he said that. Ancient, what the H3LL is going on? Li Xiaoyi was startled and felt that Gu Wenchen was talking too much. He even saved hundreds of thousands of people in Horindal? Let Mayor Ling tell you about this matter. After Gu Wenchen finished speaking, he sent someone to invite Ling Zhenchuan over. After Ling Zhenchuan arrived, he knew what Gu Wenchen meant, so he told David about helping him. This can make Li Xiaoyi and Gu Linger stunned for a while. After all, this kind of miraculous thing is not seen with one's own eyes, who can easily believe it? But they couldn't believe what Ling Zhenchuan said. After all, Ling Zhenchuan couldn't lie. After a long time, Li Shaoyi sighed and said, Ancient, even if we don't catch David, the Zhang family will not let him go, and those who are involved with David are afraid that they will follow unlucky, then Zhang Zhengzhong, but the one who made the message is going to kill David's family. As soon as Li Shaoyi finished speaking, everyone fell silent. The Zhang family, the provincial capital, is well known far and wide. No one does not know the Zhang family. The owner of the family, Zhang Zhengzhong, is a master of internal strength, and his strength is extraordinary. Now Zhang Zhengzhong has spoken out in person, I'm afraid this is going to be bad. Then can we go? Go far, to a place where the Zhang family can't find it? Sonia asked worriedly. It seems that she has also heard of the name of the Zhang family, and she has fear in her heart. Li Shaoyi shook his head, it's not that easy. Although Zhang Zhengzhong gave us the Dharma Protector Pavilion for 3 days, I know that he has already sent people to guard the intersections of Horindal. He can't trust our Dharma Protector Pavilion. This, what to do with this? Sonia panicked. Gu Wenchen and Ling Zhenchuan both had ugly expressions on their faces. After all, David saved their lives, but now, they can't help at all. Even the Wei family can ignore them, let alone. Speaking of the Zhang family, they are not even qualified to talk to the head of the Zhang family. If Gu Wenchen hadn't retreated, he might have been able to say a few words with the Zhang family, and the tea would be cold by now. I'll go to the provincial capital with you, David said suddenly. Everyone looked at David, and Sonia said anxiously, You can't go, I won't let you go, and you don't even know what kind of existence the Zhang family is. Mr. Chen, the strength of the Zhang family is not comparable to that of the Wei family. The Wei family is able to show off its power in the provincial capital. Speaking of which, it all depends on the support of the Zhang family. The Wei family is at best a business family, and the Zhang family is a martial arts family. Zhang Zhengzhong is even more powerful as a master of internal strength, it is unfathomable, you can't go. Gu Wenchen still knew the Zhang family relatively well, so he persuaded David. David smiled lightly, the Wei family is destroyed, I don't mind destroying a Zhang family. Young man, you are too crazy, haven't you heard that Muxiu will be destroyed by Lin Feng? The Zhang family has a foundation of hundreds of years, how can you destroy it if you say it is destroyed? A bit of disdain flashed in Li Shaoyi's eyes. At first, when he heard that David had rescued Gu Wenchen and Ling Zhenchuan, Li Shaoyi had some good feelings and admiration for David. But David's words made him feel disgusted immediately, thinking that David was too arrogant at such a young age. David smiled coldly, Can we destroy the Zhang family? Time will prove everything. Okay, then let time tell. Since you promised to go back to the provincial capital with us, we will leave tomorrow. I can guarantee that no one will do anything to you on the way to the provincial capital. Li Shaoyi was still in embarrassment. After all, David saved Gu Wenchen and Ling Zhenchuan. Now that David is a hero, Li Shaoyi doesn't need to be embarrassed. Okay. David nodded. This meal, David ate it easily, but Sonia had no appetite and couldn't eat a single bite. She tried to persuade David many times, but she didn't say it. She knew David's temperament and decided what to do. No one can say anything. After dinner, in order to prevent David from escaping in the middle of the night, Li Shaoyi asked Gu Linger to go home with David and Sonia. Gu Linger was Sonia's classmate and friend, so it was not inconvenient to live together, and it was only for one night. Back at the Pine Mountain Villa, Sonia's mood has not been very good, and Gu Linger's identity does not know how to persuade Sonia, neither of them speaks, the atmosphere is a bit depressing. David made 2 cups of coffee, and then brought it to Sonia and Gu Linger, the whole person seemed to be fine. What are you doing so unhappy, and it's not parting from life and death, maybe I'll go to the provincial capital for a few days and come back. Seeing Sonia like that, David smiled. David, you really can't listen to me once, let's not go to the provincial capital, if it really doesn't work, we will stay in Horindal. If the Zhang family comes to Horindal to ask for trouble, we can still fight. If you go to the provincial capital, then don't sheep go into tiger's mouth. Sonia followed David pleadingly. Do you think I can still go? David smiled slightly and glanced at Gulinger. Sonia also looked at Gulinger. After all, Gulinger came to see David here, just to prevent David from running away or hiding. Gulinger felt Sonia's gaze, her face was embarrassed, she held David's coffee in her hand, bit her lip and said, I sleep very hard, and I won't wake up if there is any movement at night. Gulinger's meaning is obvious, this is telling David and Sonia that they can escape at night while she is sleeping. Seeing Gulinger like that, David suddenly smiled, Miss Gu is telling me that I can escape at night, right? I didn't say that. Gulinger glared at David fiercely, his eyes were full of blame, how could David say it directly? David, don't talk nonsense, Linger didn't say that. Sonia also knew that Gulinger was helping them, so she glared at David and said. Ha ha ha, David suddenly laughed, the two of you haven't seen each other for many years, so let's have a good reminiscence, I don't have to worry about my affairs, I haven't married such a beautiful daughter-in-law yet, how can I die? David held Sonia's chin with one hand, and suddenly kissed Sonia's face. Sonia blushed immediately, but Gulinger was still there, so David dared to kiss her. David, you big villain! Sonia pouted angrily on purpose, but her heart had already blossomed with joy. Gulinger rolled his eyes helplessly, this bowl of dog food was a little caught off guard, but it was this time, David was still thinking about making a fool of himself. Gulinger quite admired David's mentality. At this moment, a figure suddenly rushed into the villa in a hurry, and then anxiously walked to David and said, Mr. Chen, I heard that the people from the provincial capital's law enforcement pavilion want to arrest you to the provincial capital? You must not go. I have gathered all the brothers, and thousands of brothers have blocked all intersections. If the people from the Dharma Protector Pavilion dare to take you away, I will let them not get out of Horindal. The person who came was Lin Tianhu. Because Lin Tianhu was injured, David asked him to recuperate, so he didn't tell him about it, but I don't know who actually notified Lin Tianhu. Lin Tianhu's words made Gulinger's face look very ugly. Isn't this slapping the face of the Protector Pavilion in front of her? But Gulinger didn't dare to say anything. After all, Lin Tianhu's words about thousands of brothers scared her. If the other party really had thousands of people, then the dozen or so people from the Dharma Protector Pavilion would not even want to go back. David smiled lightly, patted Lin Tianhu on the shoulder and said, Go back, I will go back after a walk around the provincial capital, and save that there are always people thinking about my family. Lin Tianhu glanced at Sonia and Gulinger, and then pulled David aside, Palace Master, if you insist on going to the provincial capital, you can go to a few gangs in the provincial capital, maybe the provincial capital also has our dragon sect. The entrance of the hall. There is no connection between the 13 hall entrances of Taipei Hall, so Lin Tianhu does not know where the other hall entrances are, nor does he know the people of other hall entrances, but the hall owners of other hall entrances must know the Taipei in David's hand. Ling Ring, as long as the provincial capital has the entrance of the dragon sect, it will be much more convenient for David to go to the provincial capital when he has something to do. Okay, I'll go around at that time. David nodded, go back and rest, although your injury is not serious, but you need to rest more, wait for me to come back from the provincial capital, and then give it to you. Refining an elixir will increase your strength one step further. Thank you, Hall Master. Lin Tianhu said with a look of joy, if anything happens, let me know at any time, and I'll take my brother to the provincial capital right away. After sending Lin Tianhu away, David looked at the Taipei ring in his hand, and couldn't help but smile bitterly. The Irvin gave this thing to himself, but he didn't say anything. Where did he go to find these halls? But not every time is as lucky as meeting Lin Tianhu. The next morning, David and Gulinger set off. After following Li Xiaoyi's round, in order to prevent Jiang's family from attacking halfway, Li Xiaoyi asked Gulinger and David to disguise themselves, and then went to the provincial capital. On the other hand, Li Xiaoyi himself took the people back with a swagger, so that he could attract the attention of the Jiang family. Gulinger drove the car and took David all the way to the provincial capital without any danger, and there was no danger on the way. Miss Gu, it's already noon. Since you're on your site, you should also do your best as a landlord and invite me to dinner. David sat in the co-pilot and smiled at Gulinger. You are about to die, and you still want to eat. Gulinger said helplessly. Even if you die, you have to be a full-fledged ghost. In life, everyone will die, it's just sooner or later, why should you care so much? David's smiling expression made Gulinger's tense mood a lot easier. Seeing that you saved my grandfather, I will treat you to a meal, but we can't go to the big restaurant, we can only go to eat snacks, so as not to be discovered by the Jiang family. No problem, just eat special snacks. David didn't choose, he can eat anything. Gulinger took David to park the car in a parking lot, and then walked to a small alley. This alley was filled with shops selling specialty snacks. Features: take you to eat the donkey meat fire in the provincial capital. The donkey meat fire in your Horrendal is not authentic. When the time comes, I will add some sausage and braised pork to the fire to keep your fragrant oil. As soon as he entered the alley, Gulinger excitedly followed David's introduction. It seems that every girl is a foodie, as long as she goes to this kind of place, she will become very excited. When David and Gulinger had just walked a few steps, they were directly stopped by three strong men. David was taken aback, looked at the three people, and found that he didn't know each other at all. Are you David? A strong man with black hair on his chest asked David. Judging from the figure and physique of this strong man, it is obvious that he has practiced hard Qigong. David did not answer him, but glanced at Gulinger beside him. At this time, Gulinger frowned tightly, took a step forward to block David and said, "Who are you?" It doesn't matter if he is what David does. The brawny man looked at Gulinger and said, "Little girl, escape from me. It's none of your business here. I'm Ye Yang from Shaman Pavilion. Today I'm going to kill David and avenge my senior brother." With that said, Ye Yang was about to attack David, but Gulinger shouted angrily, "Stop it for me, I'm from the Dharma Protector Pavilion, how dare you act in front of me? What about the people in the Protector Pavilion? If you don't let go, I'll beat you up." That Ye Yang had a gloomy face. Who cares who Gulinger is from the Dharma Protector Pavilion? You! Gulinger was instantly furious. When he was in Horrendal, Lin Tianhu looked down on them at the Dharma Protector Pavilion, but when he arrived at the provincial capital's own territory, he was even looked down upon, and Gulinger felt too embarrassed. However, before Gulinger could speak, Ye Yang threw his fist out. Despite his sturdy body, Ye Yang was very fast. Gulinger was shocked and didn't dare to be careless. After one sideways dodged Ye Yang's punch, he immediately punched Ye Yang's waist. Action ability, which is also the favorite move of the detectives. Bang! Gulinger's punch was not small, and it hit Ye Yang's body with a dull sound. Just when Gulinger breathed a sigh of relief, his body was suddenly lifted up by someone. Gulinger was shocked. Looking at Ye Yang again, she didn't even have the slightest influence. Her punch just now didn't seem to have any effect at all. He's practicing hard Qigong, how could your tickle punch make him lose his ability to move? David had long seen the doubts in Gulinger's eyes, so he explained. When Gulinger heard this, her face suddenly became extremely ugly. She hurriedly grabbed Ye Yang's wrist with one hand, and then twisted it hard, trying to let Ye Yang release herself, but no matter how hard she tried, she was simply shaken. Not even Ye Yang. Go away! Ye Yang was furious and directly threw Gulinger out. What? Gulinger screamed, and the whole person slammed into a wall. If it hits the wall, even if it doesn't die, it will break a few bones. Seeing that Gulinger was about to collide, David suddenly jumped forward, grabbed Gulinger's body, and suddenly pulled Gulinger into his arms. David hugged Gulinger and fell steadily to the ground. Gulinger let out a long sigh of relief, but when she felt the temperature on David's body, she immediately woke up and said with a blushing face, "Put me down." David hurriedly put Gulinger down, and said with an embarrassed expression, "I didn't mean to take advantage of you." Gulinger knew that David didn't do it on purpose, he just wanted to save himself, but men and women couldn't accept it, let alone in front of so many people. Being hugged by David, Gulinger was still blushing. "Boy, go to the underworld and flirt again." Yayong shouted angrily and punched David with a punch. David dodged sideways, but Yayong's fist quickly waved over. David just dodged and didn't fight back, then glanced at Gulinger and said, "I'm fighting back now, is it self-defense?" Gulinger was already full of anger at this time. Hearing David's question, he immediately said, "It's self-defense, kill him." "No problem." David raised the corner of his mouth, he was waiting for Gulinger's words. Looking at Yayong's angry look, David instantly made the spiritual energy in his Danshan flow, and then gathered it on his fist. David's fist began to emit a faint mist, and then wrapped the whole fist. Seeing the light mist on David's fist, Yayong acted very cautiously and solemnly for a while. "Silly big man, why don't you dare to do it? If you don't do it, then I will come first." David smiled playfully, the whole person suddenly jumped up, and jumped directly over Yayong's head. Yayong's face changed, he hurriedly turned around, and waved his hand at the back, which was a punch, but it was too late. At this time, David had already punched Yayong in the back. Ding ding ding! Yayong ran a few steps forward and almost fell to the ground, which relieved the strength of David's fist, but even so, he still felt his internal organs churning. Taking a deep breath, Yayong forcibly suppressed the blood that was about to spew out, and then stared at David with an extremely ugly face. "Boy, if I don't kill you today, I, Yayong, have no face to go back to the Iron Gate Pavilion." After Yayong finished speaking, his body suddenly swelled up, and then he could see a faint light all over his body. Because it was daytime, the light was not very obvious, but a general outline could be seen, and the light was like a big bell. "Cover Yayong's whole body in it."